Welcome. So we're going to answer this question before us. We're solving a trigonometric equation, and we can immediately identify that this is a tricky question because we have a coefficient other than 1 in front of our x here. So that immediately tips us off that, tricky stuff is about to happen. Okay, so how are we going to approach this? The first thing that we want to do is get rid of this 2x. So we're going to say let 2x, and you can let it be equal to anything. Let's make it equal to m. It doesn't matter the pronumeral you use here. Okay, so that means now I've got 2 cos of m is equal to negative the square root of 3. I now want to get divide both sides by 2. Okay, perfect. I've now got it into a form that I can use. So as you can see now, this is what I want. This is just business as usual now. We know how to solve trigonometric equations like this. But before we can proceed, we have to make sure that we also alter our domain. Because you see here how this is in terms of m, but my domain is still in terms of x. So to change that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to times this by 2, times this by 2, and times this by 2. Because if I have 2x is less than negative 2 pi is less than 2 pi, do you see how I know that 2x is equal to m? So therefore, I can replace this 2x with m. So let me do that. I can say that I know that negative 2 that is less than m is less than or equal to that. And now I could say, well, m is an element of negative 2 pi to 2 pi. And just like that, I am done. Okay, we now continue. I've got it in this form now, which is nice. And now all I need to do to continue is just solve it as I normally would. So the first thing that we do in this situation is we figure out what our reference angle is going to be. And hopefully you can just look at this and say, well, the reference angle is when I'm just looking at the square root of 3 on 2, and don't worry about that negative. And I know that this is going to be pi on 6. If you're still struggling to identify the reference angle, remember you can always rely on your special triangle here. So special triangle, this would be the square root of 3 to 1. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, so it must be this angle up here if I have adjacent over hypotenuse, so it's pi on 6. Once I figured out my reference angle, I then want to consider which quadrants I exist in. Let's see if I can do that a bit nicer. That's still pretty ugly, but it's fine. Now, if I'm dealing with cos, that means I'm looking at my x. And if I'm dealing with negative the square root of that, that means I'm over here. So I'm looking here and here. This is my second and third quadrants. So those are the angles for which I'm looking in, the second and third quadrants. Because that right there is negative the square root of 3 on 2. So now what I can do is say, well, m is going to be equal to what? Now, this is where you have to be careful of your domain. Do you see how I'm going from 2 pi to negative 2 pi? So if we were to consider this, that means that I'm going to get this. Now, what is that going to be? Well, if I know that my reference angle is pi on 6, if I'm in my second quadrant, that's going to be 5 pi on 6. And then I'm also going to consider that. So that's going to be 7 pi on 6 in my third quadrant. But then that's where we stop. We don't go any further, because if I was to go any further, I'd be going past 2 pi. And I don't want to go past 2 pi here. So let's, whoopsie daisy. Put that back there, and let's get rid of that. But then you also have to consider the fact that we are considering negative ones as well. So we need to consider this one and that one. To get these, there are a couple of different ways you could go about it. I think the best way is to simply go, I'm going to subtract 2 pi from that, and I'm going to subtract 2 pi from that. So to get this now, I'm going to go, all right, what is 7 pi on 6 minus 2 pi on 6? Sorry, what's 7 pi on 6 minus 2 pi? And that will be minus 5 pi on 6. Now, I might need to just make this a bit neater. Give me a second. My apologies. I might just need to move this a bit further along. This would be minus 5 pi on 6. And then to get my next one, minus 2 pi again. And this one will be negative 7 pi on 6. If you're wondering how I'm subtracting these, you don't have to write this down, but what I'm doing is I'm going, so for instance, when I'm getting 7 pi on 6 and I'm minusing 2 pi from it, I'm saying that this is the same as 7 pi on 6 minus 12 pi on 6, which is minus 5 pi on 6. That's what I'm doing. I'm just getting my denominators the same. And if you do this long enough, you're able to do this stuff pretty quickly in your head. So for that one, I'm getting negative 7 pi on 6. So that's kind of the thinking that's going behind it. But let's keep out working nice and neat. Let's get rid of that. Am I done yet? No, I am not. This is where you've got to remember that if they've given us a question in terms of x, our answer must be in terms of x. But I know that 2x is equal to m. So I'm in a good position here, because if m is equal to this, that means 2x is equal to negative 7 pi on 6, negative 5 pi on 6, 5 pi on 6, 7 pi on 6. And now if I want to get rid of this 2 here, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to times it by a half, because that will get rid of that 2. And that means I need to times all of these by a half. That means I'm going to be ending up with, wait for it, x is an element of negative 7 pi on 12, negative 5 pi on 12, 5 pi on 12, 7 pi on 12. And that, everyone, is going to be my answer. So as you can see, that's how we would approach this type of question. Make sure you put a box around your answer so the teacher knows what your answer is. And there you go. Hopefully you found this helpful. These questions are a bit involved. And yeah, there's lots of different ways to do this. So if you've done it a different way, don't stress. Hopefully you found this helpful.